You're listening to the International Moving Podcast, your guide to moving to another country, brought to you by SDC International Shipping, LA's finest. An international move is exciting. It's a time to start over, establish a new business maybe, reestablish family ties, or retire where your budget will do more for you. Please enjoy today's episode, and if you have any questions about your international move, give us a call at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for today's podcast episode. Welcome back. This is Jim for SDC International Shipping. You're listening to the International Shipping Podcast. We talk about relocating, moving to other countries, what it's like, some of the details. And today I'm going to talk to you about moving internationally to Colombia. Now, I really didn't know a lot of about Colombia until I really started researching it a few weeks ago. And I was always interested in South America, partly because I'm a soccer/football fan and I enjoy watching those countries as they compete on the world stage, the World Cup specifically, every 4 years. But even between those times, the national teams compete, and I've always found that very exciting to watch. Also, some of the legends that have to do with South America, everything from the Amazon to lost treasures to some of the notorious Nazi figures that escaped allegedly to Argentina during that time. To me, South America has always been a place shrouded in a little bit of mystery. Even Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, if you're a historian or you saw the original movie, you know they escaped to Bolivia. And so South America has always had sort of a strange appeal to me. And when I started researching Colombia, I found so much information there that I found was fascinating. For the most part, I would always think to myself, if I had to go to South America, maybe I would pick Argentina as my first destination of choice. I don't know. The more I study about South America, the more interesting things I find. I'm going to share some of those with you today. I may have to break this into 2 episodes because I just found so much information about Colombia. One of the things that surprised me was the fact that, at least as of this writing, the economy seems to be doing very well there. So I was researching the cost of living in Colombia just out of curiosity, and groceries, for example. Now, the cost of living, of course, in different countries can vary significantly, and it's important to understand the differences when you're considering a move or even just travel. But today, let me start out by comparing the cost of living between the United States and Colombia using 2023 figures and using dollars. Now, the cost of living in Colombia, and if you have a map, maybe you're not really familiar exactly where Colombia is, but if you have a map, you can see that as big as South America is, once you get kind of like a visual of it for the first or second time, you know that Brazil and Argentina take up a huge chunk of it, and then along the top you can see the other countries like Colombia and Venezuela. But the cost of living in Colombia is significantly lower than in the United States. And you can't say that about a lot of places. Now, what's interesting is, and this is something that I've come to grips with throughout my life. If you've ever been in a place where you don't have a whole lot of money, where you're kind of barely getting by, just about everyone starts out like that unless you come from a wealthy family. But you know what it's like you've experienced scrimping and saving. When you're in that kind of position, there's really no place that you can go where the cost of living is so significantly lower. It's like you found a whole other paradise. But if you come from a place where you're paying a lot of money in rent, you're paying a lot of money in for your mortgage, for your cost of living, and you have a way to maintain that income, you're not in a dangerous spot as far as financially speaking. You're successful where you are. You may not be a millionaire, but you're doing fairly well. When you take that kind of income and then you bring it out of your current setting into a new setting, that's, I think, where you really notice the difference. And a lot of people don't do this until they're older. Some people do it when they're younger. Of course, if you're younger, you're traveling lighter. You probably don't have a whole lot to bring with you. You can live the quote-unquote digital nomad life. A lot of freelancers, online freelancers do that. And they move from country to country, and they get that experience working where they are, living in maybe a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, keeping their expenses low. And it's the kind of experience you want to have before you're married and have children and you want to settle down a little bit and grow some roots. Then on the other hand, you have people that are making quite a bit of money, but it's a stressful career, stressful occupation, and they put money aside and they're at the point where either they're retiring or maybe they want to take an early retirement and they want to maybe sell their home where they're going to get $500,000 or more for it and use that money where it can go really significantly farther than it would if they stay in their present location. And in that respect, relocation to another country has even more appeal to it because you're going to a place where you can live an above average lifestyle relative to that country, but you're still spending less money than you would if you stayed here in the United States. So I just threw all that out there, but I want to take a look at the comparison between things like groceries and restaurants and transportation and housing, and look at some of the specific cost comparisons between the U.S. and Colombia. Now, we can look at things like the average cost of living for one person and a family. And of course, it's also important to note that as we look at these figures, that the cost of living can vary greatly depending on how you enjoy spending your money. Maybe you have expensive hobbies, or you want to live in a city, or you want to live outside of the city. Of course, we're looking at averages right now. But according to Numbeo.com, that's Numbeo, the cost of living comparing the United States to Colombia right now in 2023, grocery prices are 61.9% lower in Colombia than in the United States. That's amazing. And it doesn't stop there. If you live in Colombia instead of the United States, you would pay on average 68.9% less for eating out in a restaurant. Transportation, 45.5% less in Colombia than in the United States. And housing, you would pay 77.2% less for housing in Colombia than in the United States. Now, there are some other cost comparisons I can share with you. I might as well go ahead. And again, people are asking, well, where do you get these numbers from? For citations, I can give you examples like Numbeo.com, MyLifeElsewhere.com, livingcost.org.com. You can go there and you can do a comparison between one country and the other. And on this podcast, of course, we're talking about the United States versus many other places. So livingcost.org, for example, when comparing Colombia to the United States in 2023, it says the average cost of living in Colombia for one person, a single person, is $546 per month, which is approximately 75% less expensive than it is here in the United States, which according to this is $2,213. Now, we're taking a lot of things into consideration when we're talking about the average cost of living. The average cost of living for a family in Colombia, now they don't say how many people are in a family. I don't know if we're talking about 3.5 people. You know how they put a half in there sometimes. 4, I don't know. But the average cost of living for a family in Colombia is $1,336 a month, $1,336. That's 73% less expensive than in the United States. Now, the average cost of living in the United States for a family per month is $5,003. Now, that takes into consideration a lot of territory, from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the North to the South, and everything in between. Obviously, there are some places like, for example, New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, responsible for a number that high, and there are other places probably responsible, like Utah, for example, Missouri maybe, where it's much less expensive to live, that keep that number at that rate. So again, we're looking at averages. The cost of renting a one-bedroom apartment in downtown Colombia is $208.57 a month. One-bedroom apartment, downtown Colombia, which is 86% less expensive than in the United States. A one-bedroom apartment in the average downtown area is going to cost $1,528.07. Now, I'm making this recording in Sarasota, Florida, which is a little more expensive. Here, it's approximately $1,800 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. It's going to be a decent apartment in a decent area, but still that's quite a bit of money, especially if you're considering you could be putting that money towards a mortgage. Now, the cost of renting a one-bedroom apartment outside the city, which is cheaper in Colombia, is $129.29. Now, when I look at these numbers and you're thinking about them, you're hearing them for the first time, I'm sure you're probably as amazed as I am that it could actually be that cheap to live there. But of course, you do have to have a way to make money. Now, if you do have a remote job, well, then that ticks a lot of boxes because you can enjoy the kind of income that you would get possibly living in the U.S. or in the UK or another country like that, maybe even Germany, and then you move to this country, you maintain that income. But if you leave the income generation of some of these larger countries and just go there and are suddenly on a new scale, well, then, of course, you have quite a bit less coming in. But $129 for a one-bedroom apartment outside the city is incredibly low, no matter how you look at it, at least by today's standards. And that number happens to be 91% less expensive than in the United States, where a one-bedroom apartment outside the city, on average, would cost $1,434.29. So, again, it's important to note that the cost of living can greatly vary depending on your lifestyle. Do you want to be close to the water? Do you want to live on the water or a few blocks from the water? Do you want to live in a big city or not? Do you want to have, all of those things that go into it? Okay. So cost of living, obviously, it's quite a difference. Now we can look into some other things. Let's talk about, again, I have a lot of information on Colombia here to share with you. There's some things you have to understand, of course, if you're going to make this kind of move. Of course, the best thing would be to go there for yourself, see the lay of the land, experience it for yourself, maybe vacation there 2 or 3 times, and really understand if this is going to be a good fit for you or not to the best of your ability. Unless, of course, maybe you're like I said, a younger digital nomad, in which case maybe you can just pack up and go and experience it for firsthand. So Bogotá is one of the most vibrant cities in Colombia, and there's a coastal area which a lot of people are attracted to. Let me see if I can pronounce this properly. Cartagena, Medellin. So let's look at some of these. Colombia is known as the land of eternal spring. I'm not sure what writer gave it that label, but it has stuck, and it does have the kind of allure which for years has captivated travelers, expats, people seeking adventure, and this is what makes this kind of like a little gem in South America. Now, maybe you see some of the movies where you see there's all these cartels going on and all of this danger, and I'm sure some of that exists, and I'm sure it comes in stages. If you were there maybe in the 80s, it looks like a different country today, but it is a beautiful country, and it has an astounding diversity of landscapes because it includes things like the lush Amazon rainforest, and it also includes the impressive Andes Mountains. We also have the Caribbean and the Pacific coasts. So if you're an outdoor person and you really appreciate the beauty of nature, Colombia really does offer a lot from that vantage point. Also, it does have a very vibrant and diverse culture. So we take the indigenous people of Colombia and we mix that with African and Spanish influences. That's what basically makes up the Colombia of 2023. So we can be talking about things like salsa, colorful festivals and traditions. If you enjoy that kind of lifestyle with the dynamic culture, the celebrations, music, dance, those are the kind of things that you'll find in Colombia. Colombia does have, as of 2023, a thriving economy. Part of me thinks, well, the better the economy gets, probably the more it's going to cost to live there. But even if it just ekes up a little bit every year, right now where those prices are at, that's really hard to beat. But the Colombian economy has grown substantially in recent years. And that's why it's becoming, besides just the cost and the visuals, it's becoming more of an attractive destination for professionals who are looking for career opportunities abroad. The country has a diverse range of industries that are growing there, including technology, finance, and agriculture. And so if you're an expat and you're not at the place where you want to retire yet, there are opportunities available there for you. Also, affordable living, we've already talked about that. When we look at things like housing, dining out, transportation, your budget is definitely going to go further while you'll be able to maintain a comfortable lifestyle. The country is very welcoming of locals. I think that's huge. Colombians are renowned for their warmth and their friendliness. You'll find that locals, they're eager to share things like culture and assist newcomers and create lasting friendships. Colombia does have a very good reputation in this area. Unfortunately, not every country has that. So the welcoming atmosphere is a big plus. A lot of people aren't aware of it. If you've ever been there before, then you've experienced this firsthand. Next, we have the culinary scene. Colombian cuisine is, as some people call it, an adventure in and of itself. They have incredible dishes, and if you like Spanish food and tropical fruits, Colombia's food scene is a fusion of many different flavors and many different influences. So if you enjoy the culinary world, there's plenty there for you in Colombia. Cultural diversity, of course, we talked about that, its history a little bit. And then we can look at things like language and learning opportunities. Now, while Spanish is the official language, you'll find that there's a growing number of English speakers there, especially in the major cities. So for those seeking to broaden their horizons, Colombia provides a perfect environment to enhance your language skills. Choosing Colombia as your new home is not just a relocation. In a lot of ways, it's an invitation to immerse yourself in a much different type of location, where you see a lot of contrast between the old ways and the new, the traditional and the contemporary. And the nice thing about it is all these things exist, in this location at least, harmoniously. So it's definitely an exciting adventure that you have ahead of you if you're thinking about making this kind of move. Now, there are other things that I was going to talk about. I'm going to save that for another episode. I want to talk about finding a home there, finding the right location, and I want to look at the pros and cons of different areas, talking about Bogotá, for example, Cali, Medellin, and all of those. Actually, Medellin was the one that was known as the City of Eternal Spring. It's a very picturesque valley. It offers a very mild climate there. So let's talk about that in the next episode. We'll talk about housing options, cities, co-living spaces, the healthcare system, transportation, and we'll finish up with that. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this introduction to moving internationally to Colombia. I'll follow it up in the next episode. We'll conclude with it. If you enjoyed this episode, as always, please go ahead, share it with a friend. Share it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever else you happen to be. Email someone the link and let them know that you enjoy listening to the International Moving Podcast. So that's it for today. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next episode.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for listening. Whether you're relocating within the country or moving to the other side of the world, we're here to help from start to finish. Connect with us today at 888-779-3962. That's 888-779-3962.